or on this form. As a buyer's order is probably the best place to have it if you've got the form ready. I can't get to the next slide. There we go. Okay. The other piece, and that's on that Form 132, and it's here in this slide. If one of the covered powertrain components has a defect, you can ask the customer to waive coverage for that component. Unfortunately, you can't do a blanket waiver unless you want to list every single component in that definition of powertrain components, and ask the customer to waive each of those. So for a waiver to be effective, the statute requires you fully and accurately disclose to the customer that because of the circumstances unusual to the business, the used motor vehicle has a particular defect. As far as I can tell, that because of circumstances unusual to the business means the business of selling cars, and it's kind of a throwaway line, but it's in there, so we'll mention it. But basically, you have to disclose to the customer that the oil pan leaks, for example, and so the vehicle has that defect. The customer still agrees to purchase the vehicle after you've disclosed the defect, and the customer signs a waiver. And again, that waiver, just like the previous statement, has to be boldface, 10-point or larger type, sign and date it. So you've got that statement. Attention, sign here only if the seller told you the vehicle has the following problem or problems. You agree to buy the vehicle, have them sign and date it on that description. And that will exempt that component from warranty coverage. So as if the statutory state of Illinois required disclosure wasn't enough, we need to think about the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission Used Car Buyer's Guide. Beginning Saturday, vehicles that are excuse me, vehicles that are subject to the 15-day 500-mile warranty, you won't be able to sell them as is. We had some discussion with the Federal Trade Communication, tried to get them to still continue to permit that. They insist on those vehicles being sold on the implied warranties only buyer's guide. I created an example of disclosure that the Federal Trade Commission has signed off on after discussions with myself and Julie and Dennis, as I mentioned earlier. So it's got to be on the implied warranties only form and under the systems covered. And there's an example, by the way, on one of the attachments, one of the handouts. I believe it's titled Buyer's Guide. And also, for a better looking version of it, I know CDK has a pre-printed form that's a little easier to read than my version. I'm sure they're available other places too. I know CDK has it ready. And you can find that at illinoisdealers.com if you're looking for a pre-printed form. So the statement that they've signed off on is under the systems covered portion of the buyer's guide. I've got the statement there. I won't take you through it in painstaking detail, but that's the statement there for powertrain components, including, but now it's not the full blow-by-blow description that's in the state that the state requires you to have, but more of a summarized version of it. And then under the duration, you can say 15 days or 500 miles, whichever's first. Customer payment up to $100 applies to each of the first 2 repairs. So you got the state disclosure you have to make, and then also the Federal Trade Commission Used Car Buyer's Guide, the window stickers, no more as is for covered vehicles. You can still wholesale them as is, again, as long as it's not an auction that's open to the general public. Affirmative defenses, just a couple of things. if you do get into the weeds with one of your customers, the statute provides certain affirmative defenses to a customer claim. So if the claimed nonconformity does not substantially impair the use and market value of the vehicle, the nonconformity results from abuse, neglect, or unauthorized modification or alteration of the vehicle, or the claim was made in bad faith. So there is some question because the statute says, as the statute is written right now, it requires that the vehicle, bear with me, I'm flipping through the statute for the magic words. The statute says that the implied warranty of merchantability is met if the vehicle functions free of a defect in a powertrain component. And then later on says that there's an affirmative defense if the nonconformity does not substantially impair the market value of the vehicle. You know, worst case scenario, you've got somebody saying, well, my oil pan drips, it's free of a defect, or it has a defect, unless you made a disclosure of that, as we mentioned earlier. So then later on in the affirmative defenses, you can argue that the nonconformity doesn't substantially impair the use and market value of the vehicle. So one of the things that this cleanup legislation does is it makes it clear that as long as the vehicle functions for its ordinary purpose of transportation and it's substantially free of a defect, it's clear that that wouldn't give rise to coverage under the warranty. Right now, probably the safest thing, if you know it's got a little, you know, like I say, a leaky gasket or a leaky oil pan, until that cleanup legislation becomes law, it's probably the safest course to just go ahead and disclose that to the customer and save yourself the headache, rather than argue on the back end that the nonconformity doesn't substantially impair the use of the vehicle. Abuse, neglect, you get into a matter of proof there, but on our disclosure form, we do mention that it doesn't, that the warranty doesn't cover that type of damage. Similarly, the statute says that the warranty does not cover damage from off-road use, racing, towing, abuse, misuse, neglect, failure to perform regular maintenance, or failure to maintain adequate oil, coolant, or other required fluids or lubricants. So some of these could get down to a matter of proof, but there's at least some defenses. If you can show, obviously you can show an unauthorized modification or alteration, the warranty would not cover damage that results from those type of items. So like I said, there's cleanup legislation in the works. That legislation, lucky us, the General Assembly has been in Springfield for the last several days and will be for the next several days trying to hammer out a budget. So while they needed something to do in town on Saturday, they did pass this cleanup legislation on the 24th. Just for background, the General Assembly has 30 days after passage to send that legislation to the governor, which gives them until July 24th. And then after that, the governor's got another 60 days after whenever it gets sent to him to act on the legislation. So worst case scenario, we could be waiting 87 more days to find out whether this thing gets signed into law, the cleanup. We do have requests in to the legislative sponsors, Representative Mayfield in the House and Senator Link in the Senate on the cleanup legislation to transmit it to the governor's office as quickly as possible. We also have messages in to the governor's office, a request for him to act on it quickly. So we hope that sooner rather than later, the cleanup legislation will be in place. So we'll keep you posted on that. If you see a message from the IADA asking you to contact your legislator or contact the governor rather, and asking him to sign House Bill 1560 is the name of it. That's the cleanup legislation. That's what that's about. We certainly will appreciate your phone calls, letters, emails, whatever on that. So if you see some communication from us on that, that's what it's about. And the cleanup legislation, what it does, like I mentioned earlier, it would exempt a vehicle with 8,000-pound gross vehicle weight rating. So it gets the heavy-duty trucks off the board. The big piece of the cleanup legislation is if you offer an express warranty that's at least, excuse me, that is at least as good as what the statute requires, then you're not required to make the disclosure that we just talked about. So you can offer your own warranty, and you don't get into the whole providing that statement on your buyer's order, and it wouldn't apply, and so the customer can't back out or even make a claim to void the transaction if you've got an express warranty. So real quick, express warranty, it's got to be in writing, and it has to be, like I said, it has to be at least as good as what the statute requires. So right now, you might offer a product that's, 1-year warranty, that's a 50-50 warranty. Obviously that's longer than what the statute requires on time frame, but remember, under the statutory warranty, the customer's only out $100 a repair, so you may need to modify that a little bit if your 50-50 warranty winds up with the customer needing a repair on day 10 at mile 400, and if he would be out more than $100, you may need to adjust it for that. So it's got to be at least as good as what the statute requires. Even if it's in general better, it's got to, customer can't be out more than he would have been under the statutory warranty. And on a side note, I've gotten the question in the past, can I get a warranty, basically almost as an insurance type situation, purchase warranty coverage or extended maintenance coverage to cover the kind of defects that may arise, which is acceptable. You can't sell that to the customer. It's got to be something that you're offering, and be careful with the Attorney General's rules on offering free gifts. You can't advertise it as a free warranty, but you can kind of hedge by obtaining a service contract or warranty coverage for yourself in the meanwhile. But you still have to make the disclosure requirements until that cleanup legislation becomes law. The last thing that this cleanup does, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, it clarifies that if there's a minor defect in a powertrain component, which, however, does not prevent the vehicle from functioning for its ordinary purposes of transportation, and substantially free of a defect, can have a little glitch as long as it's operating substantially free of a defect in the powertrain component, that meets the warranty obligations. So if you don't offer an express warranty, but the powertrain components have a defect that doesn't rise to the level of prohibiting the ordinary transportation on the highway, you've met the warranty requirement. So all this stuff that we're talking about here on this road ahead slide is contingent on the governor signing House Bill 1560, which hasn't been sent to him yet. Like I said, we're trying to expedite that, and we will probably, once it does get sent to the governor's desk, you'll probably be hearing from IADA asking you to contact the governor's office, have him sign that. So stay tuned on that. Attached, I probably should have mentioned this at the beginning, but the attached are the disclosure form we discussed If you don't have it on the buyer's order, and I still say the buyer's order is the best place to have it, but at least make sure you make the disclosure when you sell. An example of the FTC used car buyer's guide, and that was something that was created using the FTC's website, which isn't as good as the commercial forms, but at least it gives you an idea what it should look like. As I mentioned, CDK's got something available on our website. If you really want to get down into the weeds, the Public Act 99-768, which creates the 15-day 500-mile warranty, is available, as well as cleanup legislation, House Bill 1560, that will clean up a lot of the bumps in the road on the original legislation. So I'm ready for questions. So that's kind of an overview. We're going to try and dip into the questions here and see what kind of questions, excuse me, what kind of questions have been popping up.
And all the handouts will be emailed after the presentation as well.
And if I went over any of this too fast, it'll also be available on our website as a recording. I did remember to record it, didn't I? Yeah. So we'll put that up on the website.
If the consumer is unwilling to pay the $100 for the repair, does the dealer still have to honor or fix the vehicle?
Well, good question. Just trying to think that through a minute. So the customer, if he wants the repair, my reading of the statute is that, yeah, he or she is out of pocket up to $100 to get the repair done. Does the dealer still have to honor or fix the vehicle? Yeah, so skipping through, bear with me one second while I kind of think about that. But so I'm trying to find the exact language of the repair. Bear with me one second, everybody. Okay, so let's see. So this implied warranty comes into effect before the consumer can try and exercise any other remedies under the commercial code. So the statute requires the seller, requires the purchaser to give the seller a reasonable opportunity to repair the vehicle. It says the customer shall pay half the cost of the first two repairs to bring the vehicle into compliance. So, yeah, so the statute requires the customer to give the dealer an opportunity to fix it. And as part of that, the customer does pay the $100 for each of the first two repairs. So, yeah, the customer's got to be willing to fork up to $100 a repair.
Do we have to change all buyer's guides by July 1st?
So yes, and by buyer's guide, I assume that that question is asking about the Federal Trade Commission used car buyer's guide. And the answer is yes, because for affected vehicles, you won't be able to sell them as is anymore. You'll have to use the implied warranty buyer's guide. There's a sample attached that you can use in a pinch or order from the vendors. They're ready to go. But yes, you do have to use the new buyer's guide. And one of the things, a question I've had earlier, there's kind of a couple of things going on. The Federal Trade Commission changed the buyer's guides back in late January, but then gave everybody a grace period to use up their old forms. until January of 2018. And that's true as far as it goes, except now you will need to switch over from the as-is guide to the implied warranties guide. So even though the Federal Trade Commission is giving you until January to use up your old forms, and you can still use those as-is forms until January of 2018 for vehicles that fit the exemption. That's not going to be too many vehicles, unfortunately. So you will need to switch over to the implied warranties only. You might as well switch to the new version of that and make the required disclosure as far as systems covered and duration that we discussed earlier.
Does the warranty apply to vehicles sold out of state?
I would read the statute to require you to provide that disclosure, whether it's in-state or out-of-state. There's a lot of funky kind of questions like that where this, quite frankly, the statute isn't written as well as it could be, so it's not clear. But I would read it, yes, to require you to make that disclosure for your out-of-state customers, just the same as your in-state customers.
If the consumer is unwilling,
Yeah,
we got that one. Okay. On auction sales, when the auction is open to the general public, who is responsible to honor the implied warranty, the auction of the dealer who owns the car? The auction or the dealer?
Yeah, the auction or the dealer. Yeah, excellent question. My advice on that would be for the dealer to make that disclosure. Now, when a lot of times, I understand when you're selling at the auction, you don't know who the ultimate buyer is going to be. But I would provide that. I would advise you to provide the disclosure, you, the dealer, when you sell that vehicle at auction.
Does sale of a service contract where coverage meets or exceeds statute suffice in place of notice once cleanup is signed?
Let me see what I got some. Well, you have to offer it. So, yeah. Let me bear with me 1 second. I'm gonna go straight to the text of that. Under the cleanup legislation, the warranty, the 15-day, 500-mile warranty requirements will not apply to the sale of the vehicle where the dealer offers an express warranty that provides coverage equal or greater than the limited warranty. So you have to offer that coverage, and if you're using a service contract, if for some reason, let's use an example, you sell a car today, the warranty company goes out of business tomorrow and the customer has a claim the day after that, if you cannot get the warranty company to cover it, it's going to be your responsibility. It's going to be an express warranty. You will make sure that your dealership covers it. Where did the question go? Sorry, I want to make sure now that I've been rambling, I want to make sure I actually answered the question. So you can offer that. You can't really charge, and I guess we need to think about how that's going to work. You can sell extended coverage, and but you have to offer and back your dealership back for 15 days, 500 miles, the powertrain component coverage. Not sure if I've completely answered that question. If there's follow-up, we can try and address it either on this webinar or we'll have contact information afterwards, and I can give you a little more formal response.
Next question is, how is this a 50-50 warranty if the customer is only on the hook for $100?
Yeah, I guess I would call that a hybrid. It's because, and just to use a couple of examples to explain it. So if the repair costs $50, then the customer pays 50% of that, $25. If it's, however, it's capped, so he's only out, customer's only out $100. So if it's a $500 repair, customer pays customer pays $100. The dealership's on the hook for the other $400. So yeah, it's not a true 50-50 warranty because the customer out of pocket is capped at $100.
Next question, can a buyback be a trade-in?
Can a buyback be a trade-in? I apologize, I'm not quite sure what the customer or what the question is there. Can a buyback be a trade-in? I apologize, sir. I can't. I'm not sure what they're asking there.
Next question: if the implied warranty is not disclosed, what is the time frame that the customer can unwind the sale?
Yeah. Yeah. So if you fail to make the disclosure, and I assume this question comes up, what happens on day 16? Can the customer still void the transaction? And I'm not sure that the statute is real clear on that, but let me give it a look here. And that's one we'll have to do a follow-up, and I guess I'll mention right now we will be responding to these either via email, or I think we're going to try and put some of the more common questions up on our website, question and answer. All the statute says, though, and again, this is another example of the statute not being written as clearly as it could be. It says that it's voidable at the option of the customer if you don't make the disclosure. Arguably, whatever, and I don't know off the top of my head, whatever the statute of limitations for bringing an action under the Consumer Fraud Act would come into play. I don't think you're free and clear on day 16, though, if you haven't made that disclosure. So I think it's really important that you make the disclosure starting July 1st.
Next question. So a dealer that provides a warranty that is substantially the same as or better than this, do we use the buyer's guide that says implied warranty or the as-is guide?
That you you wouldn't be using the as-is, and I believe the FTC has an express warranty version, and I think so. So you would be using the one hot second. Bear with me 1 second, everybody, and I. Sorry. So you would still, for vehicles that are covered, you would still use the implied warranties version of it, but instead of checking the implied warranties only, you would be checking the dealer warranty box on the form.
Okay, the next question is, can a copy of the new buyer's guide be used until the dealer can get the new buyer's guide ordered and in stock? I assume.
Yeah, so that attachment, and I believe, make sure you've got the front and back. I'm not sure if we attach both sides or just the relevant piece, but yeah, you can print it out and use this until you can get a commercial version in stock.
Okay, what happens if our supplier cannot get us ample FTC labels in time to have all used vehicles set up with the new form?
Yeah, like I said, the attached version will work until then. It's not the most beautiful looking form in the world, but it will work until we can get you supplied.
The next question is, does this apply to all gaskets or just oil pan gaskets?
Oh, so the statute says oil pan and gaskets. I guess I'm going to say that that's going to be another one that I'm going to follow up on, just because I'm not a mechanic and I want to make sure I tell you the right thing. So I will follow up, but I think any gasket in the engine, because it does say the engine block, all internal engine parts, oil pan and gasket. So anything that's conceivably part of the powertrain, those gaskets. I'll give you a more formal answer than that, but that's kind of my off the top of the head answer.
What is the age requirement for an antique exemption?
So yeah, the antique vehicle is defined in the vehicle code as anything that's over 25 years old. So we discussed that a little bit earlier. You've got sometimes where you'll have, an odd actual mileage vehicle that's between 10 and 25 years old, even though you may know full well that it's way over 150,000 miles. If you don't have the actual mileage, you're going to have to provide coverage. So again, another one of those glitches in this statute.
Next question, does the implied warranty need to have systems covered and duration listed? The form shown seems to separate implied and dealer warranty areas. The implied section seems to advise of the new law to the consumer.
So if you're if you're not offering an express warranty, there's two check boxes. There are implied warranties on the form. The implied warranties only or dealer warranty. You're going to check implied warranties only if you're not doing an express warranty, and then under the systems covered, just like in the attachment, that statement, and it's also on one of those slides, powertrain components including but not limited to engine block, head, internal engine parts, et cetera, and so forth. So check the implied warranties box and then put that in the systems covered. And then if the cleanup legislation takes effect, you can put it under the check dealer warranty and then the same disclosure.
Is dealer obligated to repair in any other shop other than our own?
The statute, let me double check, but I believe the statute requires the customer to give the seller a reasonable opportunity to repair. So let's see, here we go. So the statute requires the customer to give the seller a reasonable opportunity to repair. So the customer has to come back to you.
Okay, next question. There was an amendment that listed 2 years old, 50%, 2 to 3 years old, 25%, 3 to 4 years old, 10%, and 4 more years old, none. What can you share about that?
Okay, so interestingly enough, when this new 15-day, 500-mile warranty statute was created, if you look at the full text of the Public Act, which is our third attachment there, Public Act 99-768, you can see that just for those of you who don't spend all day looking at legislation, the new language in this, so there's a bunch of language. There's stuff in regular type, there's stuff that's underlined, and there's stuff that's got a line through it. So the stuff that's just in regular type is the old language of the statute, and the stuff with the line through it is stuff that will be taken out of the statute beginning July 1st, and the underlined stuff language will go into the statute. So when this 15-day 500-mile warranty was created, it deletes that 50% for vehicles less than 2 years old, 25% coverage for 2 to 3 years old, 10% coverage. That language is struck, so that requirement actually goes away beginning July 1st.
Is there a different mileage exemption for motorcycles, or is it still 150,000?
Yeah, it's still 150,000 miles. The statute just says vehicles. And if you look in the definition of vehicles in the vehicle code, it's expansive enough to include motorcycles, and there's no exemption for them. So all the same requirements that apply to passenger vehicle apply to motorcycles.
Should the implied box be marked when a manufacturer warranty is still in effect?
You know, I would, no, it would not. Yeah, that's a good question, because the manufacturer warranty, so let's see. Yeah, you would check, you would still use the implied warranties form, but you would check manufacturer's warranty still applies, assuming that the manufacturer's warranty has more than 15 days and 500 miles of coverage. I'm going to follow up on that because I want to make sure I tell you the absolute correct way to disclose. So we'll have that in a follow-up on our website and in a follow-up email. I do want to make sure that we give you the right instruction on how to fill that out, though.
What if you wholesale vehicle to another dealer or junkyard?
So it applies to retail sales only, and retail sales including an auction if the general public can go to. But if you're wholesaling it where John Q. Public doesn't have the opportunity to purchase it, or you're selling it to a junkyard, that's not a retail sale. It's not going to apply.
What are the list of exempt vehicles and which are included in the statute?
That was in our earlier slide, the exempt vehicles. Excuse me, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. About the 6th slide in, the slide titled Used Vehicles discusses the exempt vehicles under current statute. I'll add to that if and when, fingers crossed, House Bill 1560 becomes law, then vehicles with an 8,000-pound plus gross vehicle weight rating would also be exempt. But right now, for sure, anything over 100,000 miles, or I'm sorry, over 150,000 miles, or over 25 years old, aka an antique vehicle, or a vehicle branded either as a flood or rebuilt vehicle. Those are exempt. Every other used vehicle it's going to apply to.
The next question asks, so what you're saying, any used car under the warranty, the most a customer can be out is $50?
The most will be out is $100. It's 50% up to $100 per repair. So, and then just to really drill into that, if it comes in for a second repair for the same component, it's a maximum of $100 per component. So the most the customer is going to be out is if there's 2 repairs for 2 different components, where the repair cost per component is $200 or more, most the customer is going to be out is $200, $100 a repair.
Next question, does this warranty apply to person-to-person sales when the seller is not a dealer?
I would read that as not applying to person-to-person sales, because that they're not considered retailers. It's not considered a retail sale. So it applies to dealers. I don't think it applies to John Q. Public, though, if I sell my car personally to you for some reason.
When the sale price is $3,000, but the repair price is $5,000, and consumer demand the repair be done, even if the dealer wants to refund the purchase price.
Let me get right to the exact text of the statute, but I'm going to say off the top of my head the answer is no, but let me read word for word. If you will bear with me. Okay. Okay, so no. Let me see the question here. So sale price $3,000, repair. Can the customer? Okay. So sorry, I'm mumbling there. So the question is, if you sell a vehicle for $3,000, customer comes back 5 days later and says it turns out it's going to cost $5,000 to repair the vehicle, can the consumer demand the repair to be done if the dealer would prefer to refund the purchase price? And the statute says that the maximum maximum liability of a seller for repairs under this section is limited to the purchase price for the used motor vehicle to be refunded to the consumer or the lender as applicable in exchange for return of the vehicle. So the worst case scenario is you unwind the deal, give the customer back what he paid for the vehicle, and you're done. Now, one thing to point out on this is this is a little different than a spot delivery situation where if you spot deliver a vehicle while the customer's trying to get financing and the customer cannot get financed, you must, in that situation, you must return the vehicle, the traded in vehicle, to the customer when you unwind that deal or you cancel out that deal. This is a little different than that situation because it's not a spot delivery. The customer did get financed and you completed the transaction, and then 10 days later, for example, you wind up buying the vehicle back. It's a separate transaction as far as titling it and as far as your obligation to return the trade-in. So if you sell a car today, customer, you sell the trade-in tomorrow, customer brings the vehicle back in, and you wind up undoing it because it's going to cost you $5,000 to repair a $3,000 vehicle, you're not obligated to return the trade-in to the customer. You already sold it. Now, if you haven't sold it and he wants it back, you can work that out, but you're not required to if it's gone, unlike the spot delivery situation. So something to keep in mind. Okay.
Is it okay to put in writing on the buyer's guide that all work must be performed by the selling dealer?
Yeah, the statute's silent on that, but my reading would be that it would be okay to put that on the document saying, hey, you got to come back here, because the statute, again, like we said, the statute requires the customer to give you, the seller, a reasonable opportunity to repair the vehicle.
The attached form looks like the systems covered is cut off. Does it contain all the necessary text?
So, yeah. So, I assume you're talking about the buyer's guide form. And so it kind of, in the attachment, it reads funny. Like I said, that's why I mentioned CDK's forms are going to look a lot better than this. So if you're reading down that left-hand column on that attachment, the last line, the first sentence beginning on that last line, dealer provides no express or, and then you got to kind of skip up to the second line there. There wasn't enough space on the FTC's website to really space that as well as I'd like. dealer provides no additional express or implied warranty and specifically disclaims any additional express or implied warranty beyond the limited implied warranty. So that duration line has 15 days or 500 miles up at the top, whichever occurs first. Customer payment of up to $100 applies to each of the first 2 repairs, and then there's a space, and it picks up the bottom part of that, picks up the left-hand column. Like I said, CDK is going to have a better looking form, but it's in there. It's just not as pretty as it could be.
The next question, if I'm going to use Form 132, does it get signed if the vehicle is under manufacturer's warranty, basically on all used vehicle sales?
Yeah, I would still make the disclosure and have them sign that form, even if it's got the balance of the factory warranty. Good question, but yeah, I would say absolutely yes.
Okay, we're going to do about 1 or 2 more questions, and any we did not get to, we will respond via email. Let's see. What is the reasonable amount of time the dealership has to fix the defect?
Yeah, that's like the old question, why is there error? So, you know, I would say whatever your standard time to repair a vehicle is. Remember, the 15-day, 500-mile clock stops ticking while the vehicle's in the shop, so you don't want to just sit on it forever, because you can't run out the clock on the warranty coverage by having it in the shop. So, you know, it's going to be fact specific, depending on, you know, whether the part's in stock and how complicated the repair is. But you know, we can spend all day trying to figure out what reasonable is. Why don't we do one more, Megan, and then be sure you can send your questions to my email address. I think we had that on the first slide. Yeah, I'm on the first slide, ldahl@illinoisdealers.com. I'll get replies out probably in a general form, but I'll also try to get specific emails answered too. Let's do one last one, and then we'll wrap it up.
What boxes would you check if vehicle is under factory warranty? Do you still check the box for implied warranty, as well as the manufacturer's warranty still applies?
And that's one we kind of touched on that earlier. That's kind of my initial thought, but I'll dig in a little bit and research that one, make sure that's the exact answer. But I believe that's how we would handle that. Okay.
Just to mention again, the CDK forms are available. All these handouts we discussed today will be emailed to you. If you have any follow-up questions, feel free to send them to Larry or myself, and we'll be sure to follow up with you. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, everybody.